we're ready for our next guest, which is another bookstore owner. So, Rhonda, we're bringing on Trenessa Williams. She's owner of Kizzy's Books and More. And we have it listed at Winter Garden, Florida, but I'm not sure that's where the store is located. I think that's where she lives, but we'll find out in a minute. So, Trenessa, welcome
Hey,
to Black Authors Matter TV.
how you doing? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Yeah.
being.
And I'm assuming that Kizzy's books is named after Kizzy and Roots, or no?
Yes, ma'am. That's my favorite character from Roots. So you nailed it right on the mark. Many people ask me, Trenessa, how did you come up with Kizzy's? And I say she's named after Chick and George's mom and Kuta Kinte's daughter.
So tell me,
Is
what
after
was it about Kizzy that resonated with you? Why is she your favorite character?
to me, it's her strength and her willpower throughout the whole story. So I love the whole, even though it was done before my time, I watched it every year faithfully. And it was something about her strength and how she was throughout the whole series and in the book that I liked her. So when I decided I wanted to own a bookstore many moons ago, and I had to come up with an idea and a concept and a name. And I was like, let's do Kizzy's. And when you look at the character, you can see her what the logo for the bookstore is what draws you in. And it links a little bit.
Well, she definitely had a lot of things happen to her over the course of her life. If anybody, for those of you who have watched Roots, you know about Kizzy. And for those who haven't, you have to watch it. It's like a rite of passage. You have,
Mm-hmm.
and the second one too. But
I enjoyed. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't think anything takes the place of the original, but I enjoyed the reimagining of Roots, and I thought they did a good job with updating that story while still holding true to the history
Mm-hmm.
of the book. I mean, I thought they did a great job with it.
They did. And then also too, another thing that I loved as well when he did the whole Queen series. That was a great one too.
yeah,
I
that
mean,
showed the other side. Have you seen Queen, Rhonda?
no, I saw it, but I never finished it. So I need to go back and watch it again. That came out while I was in college. I remember that.
Okay, yeah, it was the other side of the family. So,
Right.
but the second, I was referring to the second Roots, the next generations.
Okay. The
Yeah,
next,
not the remake of the original Roots.
okay.
With
Well, I was just saying I enjoyed the
you,
remake.
but you did say that.
Yeah, I said I enjoyed the remake because I just like that they wanted to bring a lot more historical significance to the movie, and I thought they did a
Mhm.
really good job with injecting a lot of that.
Well, when the first one came out, it was a national event. It was a national moment. It was like George Floyd, but not in a negative way. But um, it was a nationwide thing. It was major. It was like the first of its kind. It was on for a whole week. It was on every night for a whole week on network television. So it it made an amazing mark on just the psyche of the nation. It was as impactful as George Floyd. It didn't cause demonstrations, of course, because Black people saw it as a positive. Um, some people, I heard this years later. Some people said when they would go to work the next day, they would be mad. You know, they would have to hold their feelings and stuff. Um, but it was a national event when the original came out. So that's why it's hard for me to put the new one, the remake, in the same vein, just
Well,
because of the impact of the first one.
well, it
But I'm
appears.
sure it was great. I didn't see the whole thing. I just couldn't, it just it wasn't the same for me. So I couldn't watch the whole thing.
Well, I think we that's a whole different
It
conversation. I
is.
don't
It is.
know, but no, it made an impact on you so much that you named your store
Mm-hmm.
after.
Yeah.
after
Yes,
Kizzy.
ma'am. I wanted to make sure that when I know you all are probably curious, like Trenessa, how did you come up with Kizzy's? What made you want um, to own a bookstore? So I'm gonna lead up to that if it's possible, or you all are the host. I'll
Well, no, when did you open the bookstore? And then tell us
Okay.
the backstory.
Okay, so the launch the website, because we're online now. We don't have a physical location, so we've been online since 2018. So
Okay.
our website launched in 2018, but the idea and the concept of Kizzy's actually started in 2008. I had just moved. I had moved to Orlando in November of 2007. And a couple months later, I started my MBA program, and I got up one Saturday, and I was like, want a book. And there was this popular Black owned bookstore named Montessor Books that was here in Orlando. It was flourishing. And I remember coming and visiting when I was an undergraduate at FAM. I would come to, or when I visit my sister, I would always go to this bookstore. So one Saturday I got up and I went to that location, and that bookstore was not there anymore. And so after that, I started to look to say, okay, where can I go to buy a book? That's, Black owned bookstore. And then come to find out, there wasn't one at all. And so that sparked my curiosity. That made me want to own a bookstore. But my parents always told myself and my siblings that no matter what it is that we start, sink or swim, meaning either you give it your all so that way it's be successful was what you wanted, or you're gonna sink at it, meaning that you didn't put any effort into it. And so I was like, okay, um, sink or swim. I need to get some information on here. So I started that quest in regards to getting some information on wanting to own a bookstore. But throughout that time, I went on to school. I finished my MBA, got a marketing, and went and got my doctorate. And then my mom had a come to Jesus moment with me. And she was like, Miss, you've been doing this for about 10 years, doing this research, going to this conference. What are you going to do? And so 2018, September 19th, that's when the website launched with the goal here. It's the goal to still have a location here in Orlando in the Paramore area, because that was a historical area for African Americans here in Orlando. So the goal is to here, because we don't have a central location, because our stories matter. And we need to have a place here in Orlando that promotes the literary works, because we have some amazing authors. And when they come here, really isn't no location here as it relates to for authors. So that's what I've been working towards doing, promoting literacy, and to also there are quite a bit of book deserts here in Orlando. In the Orlando, I live in Ocoee, which is outside of Winter Garden, but there's a lot of book deserts here, meaning that there are areas where kids don't even have access to books that relates to them. And so last year, I started a book donation drive, collected 122 books from grades K through 12, and those were given out to the kids to make sure they had a book that represented them, because reading is the most powerful thing. And it's the gateway for many things, and it's the superpower that leads us to think and to connect, become empathetic with the stories. And oftentimes, when we read a good book, it sparks that curiosity to make us want to know more about it, because we get that experience to live it through the powerful words of that author. And then that's what I started to do as a part of a project with Kizzy's, is to get where those kids can have access to a free book. I'm doing it again this year as well, because here in Florida we have the banned books, and there's a lot of places here. There's even a lot of libraries that don't have particular books because they're banned, and the stories are being silenced and everything.
I was actually going to ask you about that because, Florida has been making a lot of news about not being the best place for Black people to live. And I'm wondering, how has that impacted your store? Do you find more people are wanting to learn and they're coming to your store, especially in the place that I believe you're near Orlando?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit of people that come to us for that purchase from us. We have people across the country. A couple weeks, about a week or so ago, I sat on a panel with a couple people that was in politics, a couple community leaders, And what they talked about is in regards to the impact of what's going on as it relates to education, how it's impacting us, and what are some solutions that we have for the community. And that's exactly what I talked about, is that our kids need to have access. And one of the solutions that I had came up with, and I started to do last year, is to make sure that our kids have access to a book. This year, I reached out. Last year, it's just my customers, they donated books and they just mailed it in. I said, wherever you shop out, if you see a book that's banned or your favorite children's author that you would like a child to have, just mail it to us. And so that helped. And representation matters. So we worked on that particular when they asked me about, well, what is the solution, or what do you think that some parents should do? And I said, if you know, even if you don't have a child, and if you're out at a store, you can buy a book and just say, hey, this book fits some of your interests, just to get one book that's related. I have a friend that's a teacher, and I donated one of the books that I collected last year. I donated a book, and one of the characters, it was I can't think of her name right now, but it begins with the O, and she's a famous tennis player. But she has this book that talks about diversity, and one of the characters in the book is in a wheelchair. And so my friend as a teacher, I gave her that book, and she added that to her class library. And she has a little girl this year that's in the wheelchair, and just by her seeing a Black child in a wheelchair in that picture book, she related to it and she read it so much, and that really sparked with her interest. And so one of the things that I was saying, that with the promotion in, especially for kids to access the reading and to spark that interest, is to find out something that they need and or that they're interested in, and just give them that book. And that book, they might read it about 50 times, but that one book might spark that interest to read something else and to spark that curiosity. So that's a couple things there. What we talked about is something that we can do, because reading and writing is some of the most powerful things. And throughout history, that's one of the things they tried to restrict us with, is through literacy and our ability to write, because those are some of the powerful things. And so if we can get to our kids, even our adults too, some of them are trying to figure out what books to read and what are some great authors, because we have some amazing people that write. And if you some people just don't know where to start, and if you can just give them a recommendation, say, hey, do you like such and such? This is a page turner here. And then next thing you know, like, you're going to fall in love with this book, and you're going to be living for it. And that's one of the things there. And I think that's one of the things that I work towards doing, is making sure that we have access and have that free flow of where we can talk about books. Even with myself, I'm always open to a book. So if you say, hey, Trenessa, you need this book in your life, go ahead and read this book. I'm gonna say, okay, let me go and get this book in my life. I need it. And then I read it. And one of the great things is, reading is a great escape, and it's the most powerful thing. And that's why I tell a lot of people, reading is your superpower, because right now, one of the things that is being powerful right now is they know that knowledge is power. And they're trying to restrict that knowledge. And right now I'm currently reading multiple books. But one of the books that I'm reading now, that's is called Black Voices, by Jessica and Mitchell and Awar. I probably said the name wrong, but let me know if I said it wrong. But in here, she has there's a quote in here by Hale Selassie, and he talked in that quote that's in there, says, education and the quest of knowledge only stops at the grave. So it's telling you to continue on to get that quest of knowledge, and reading is where you can get that quest of knowledge. And it's that gateway.
I'm very passionate about what you're saying. And it's always great to see people who have a passion for
Mhm.
literacy. I share that passion with you. I believe the book that you were talking about earlier was by Naomi Osaka.
Yes, that's what it is.
I looked it up. It's The Way Champs Play. And
Mhm.
there is a character in a wheelchair.
That's the book. And just by giving it to, I want to say she's in second grade, but just by having that book, and she added it to the library, and that she said every day that child when they have reading time, she goes to get that book because that's it's good to see something that represents her.
That's a good, you've given me some food for thought. I'm going to be working on my book series installment 6 and 7 this year. So, that's something that I may include in the characters in the book. I hadn't thought of that one. You try to include different, you look at different angles when you write. So, but that's one that I'm going to include in either 6 or 7, or maybe both. So you say you don't have a physical location yet. If I heard you correctly, did
Yes,
you
ma'am.
say
We don't
that?
have a physical location, just online.
Do you do pop-up shops
Yes,
at all?
ma'am, I do. In
Okay.
fact, actually, a couple last week, last Thursday, I was a vendor at there was a Black History Month event at the Rosen. They have a campus with UCF, the University of Central Florida, and I was one of the vendors that was there. So on occasion, I do pop-ups throughout the county.
Area. Okay. Well, that's good. So do you anticipate doing the brick and mortar permanent, or do you want to focus more on an online presence?
No, when I started, the first thing, having a physical location, that was my main concern. But then I was like, no, you know what? Let me go online first to build that momentum, and then have the location. But working in higher ed and doing this at the same time. So I finally now I'm really making plans on doing some things, but that's one of the things is the physical location, because there needs to be an actual location where lovers of African American literature and the culture, they can come together, especially here in Orlando, so that way they can meet up, discuss books, and have a wide range of books that represents us. Because in the big stores, they don't have a big selection of our work. You probably find a small section that's like a bookshelf.
And they have all the books. They don't have our books. Well, and I'll just use Barnes and Nobles as the example of that.
Mhm.
They don't create genres for our books. They just have all of our books in one section. So
Mhm.
they have the romances with the mysteries, with the
Mhm.
fantasies, with the nonfiction. They motivate. They just have a African American. And when one in the Barnes and Nobles, one of them I went in, they called it urban literature, which is
Mhm.
not. That's not what it
Mhm.
was. But they just it's like the Black stuff they have in a section. And on
Mhm.
the one hand, you can go look at things, but and it was always in the back of the store.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
I would say that the Barnes and Noble near me, I think they've done a little bit better job. First of all, they don't call it urban fiction; they call it Black voices in fiction. Or
Mhm.
okay. Okay.
I'm cool with that. And but I see the Black section, so to speak, two ways. Because one, I don't want us all to be in one section because we don't all have the same literary taste. But at the same time, sometimes I just want a Black author. I want
Yeah, I mean it's like six on one hand and half a dozen on the other. You
right.
know,
Mhm.
on in a good in a one way. I just don't like the way they have it labeled because see here it was urban literature when they had historical fiction in there. That's not urban.
Mhm.
Exactly. That's
It's
why I said
like
I prefer to see Black voices in literature or something like that.
Mhm.
Don't call
well,
it all.
that's better. That's better than what they had, unless they
And even when Borders, I don't even think Borders is
or
around anymore. But I remember when Borders, they used to have like a whole section. It was much bigger and wider selection than Barnes and Noble. So at
yeah,
least I used to
they
be
did.
able to get lost, when you talk about Barnes and Noble, but back in the day, I'm making it sound like I'm about 70 years old. But but they used to have this huge selection, and I used to sit on the floor and just get the books that I wanted to read or look to see what type of literature, because they had it broken down into different sections. Now it's just like one big pile and
Yeah,
stuff that, and it's more than those particular we have more genres than that.
Yeah, we have many genres.
Mhm.
And at the National Black Book Festival, we normally will have 20 genres
Mhm.
every year, all different kinds of books. So we and in a black bookstore, things are broken down according to different
Mhm.
genres. But it's just at the big box stores, they just see us as one big blob,
Mhm.
and that's how they have our books. And it could be a memoir. They had everything in this urban section. Uh, religious and faith was there too. T.D. Jakes' books, they had everything in that section. So, um, do do people who, well, I guess because you don't necessarily have people coming in, um, but when you do pop-ups, for example, or they might even ask you online, do people ask you where the name Kizzy came from, or do most people know where it came from, or do most people not know?
No,
Okay.
most people don't know because
Okay.
often sometimes people get asked, um, "Your name is Kizzy." I'm like, "No, my name is Trenessa." And then, or and then you're gonna laugh at this too because you know how my logo looks. One person was like, "You did your logo after Prince," and I was like, "No, no, ma'am." And I was like, "I don't think my logo looks like Prince," but thank you. But
Oh,
but yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. I can kind of see it. I see where they're going with it. The afro.
Probably so. And a little string
I
of hair.
guess on first glance, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I never saw it, but yeah, but people do ask. Some people often ask those that do know um, about Roots. They automatically ask, "Is your bookstore named after Kizzy, the character from Roots?" And then there are some others that ask, "Well, why would you use the name Kizzy's? It's different. People will remember it by."
It
And then
is
I
memorable, and that's
so
the only place I've heard it is in
mhm,
Roots. I haven't heard anybody. I haven't heard that name
mhm,
anywhere except
I've
Roots.
met one. I've met a person named Kizzy once in my life, and
Have
I
you?
had a friend named Toby, and never.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think they're the only two people in my life I've ever met with those names.
mhm. Yeah,
Wow.
I know a couple. Actually, I have a friend now, that her name is Kizzy, but even growing up, I met like one or two Kizzies ever so often.
Yeah, it's an uncommon name. And he said it was from his it was a tribal word. It
Mhm,
meant stay put. And
mhm,
so I don't know if people who are from that region of Africa are named Kizzy still. I
mhm.
don't know if that name has
Yeah,
circulated, but
yeah,
in
yeah.
Roots, she led a full life, and she
Mhm,
had a lot of hard things
yeah,
happen to her,
yeah,
but
and many
she
years.
also overcame them, you know, through
Mhm,
her legacy, through her children. I
mhm.
like when she spit in Miss Ann's water.
Yeah, I rooted for that one. Yeah, a couple like many years ago, when I was in middle school, actually my mom had went over to West Africa and she managed to actually get around that time there was a few relatives that were still alive there and she was able to get a picture of I want to say like two or three of the relatives that were still alive, but this was back in like in the 90s time when she went over. So, and she was able to get a picture because they visited that area. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I thought that was pretty cool that she was able to go and see a couple of the relatives that were still alive around that time.
That's cool.
Wow.
I like.
Wow.
Mhm.
Well, we did
So,
put the link to your bookstore in the chat, and it's Kissy's books and wait, where is it?
and
Kissy's
more.
books, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, wait a minute, what happened to it?
Yeah,
I see
so
it.
the
Oh, I see
website
it.
is www.kizzy'sbooksandmore.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
see it.
maybe I
He
need to
posted.
refresh this.
Mhm,
Okay, because
mhm.
I was missing it.
Yeah, and one of the viewers said that a beauty salon in her old neighborhood used to have a stylist
Okay.
named Kizzy.
'Cause oh, wow.
Mhm. So it is a name. And Gwen Hayes said, yes, Borders did a better job of displaying our books.
I'll tell you, Borders was very supportive of authors of color. When I first wrote my book, my very first book back way now here I go back in the day.
It's 20, isn't it your
Yeah,
20th anniversary this year
yes, this is the 20th anniversary of my first
of their
book.
first book?
Yeah, of back then, Cheating in the Next Room, I promoted it all the time at Borders. Anytime I wanted to do a book signing at Borders, they let me do it. We used to have writers clubs there, writers workshops there. I miss Borders.
Yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time there because here we don't have it now. But here during that time we had the Shrine of the Black Madonna.
Mhm.
And it was a major, like they had a huge book selection, art. They had a huge area where we could have events. So we had a lot of our events there. So that was kind of what we supported. We had a Borders, but it wasn't close. It was kind of off the beaten path. And they kind of closed all at once. I think like
It's all of a sudden.
nationwide, they just closed all.
Mhm.
But I
Um,
will say though, Trenessa, thank you for what you are doing
Mhm.
for literacy and for just keeping Black books alive, especially in a place like Florida.
Mhm.
There's so much going on, but thank you for what you are doing and keeping the culture alive. This is what we need more of. So keep that passion going, and if there's anything that I can do to support, let me know.
Thank you. And again, as I mentioned before, I've got this nervous itch right here. Sorry. Again, as I mentioned before, I am collecting books for picture books, middle grade books, chapter books, young adult books written by Black authors. If wherever you are in the United States, if you manage to go by a store and you see a book and you would like to donate, just go ahead and we are accepting it. And you can mail it to the address that's on our website at the bottom. That's our UPS store website. I mean, our UPS store address. So if you manage to go out and just pick up one book, you can mail it to us, and that'll be donated to given out to a child this summer. So yes,
okay,
ma'am.
so do you have a deadline for
Yes,
when
ma'am.
you're
It's
trying to
April
receive?
29th. The deadline is April 29th.
Okay.
So the deadline is to have them in April 29th. So far, I've collected 60 books. And the goal is I want to go, the goal is 300 this year. We'd like to go more than that, but the minimum is 300 this year. So that way, at least we have 300 kids this summer to have a book to read.
That's wonderful. And is the information on your website so people
Yes,
want to?
ma'am.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV, and continued success with Kizzy's Books and More and all
Thank
of
you
their
so much
future
for
events.
having me.
Thank
Okay.
you. Have a great
Thank
night.
you. You too. Be safe. Bye.
You too.